It's been a good year here in the polytunnel and indeed over in the greenhouse. If not somewhat a slow start, eventually we got there. I've had many tomatoes and there are still many to come. Aubergines, chili peppers, sweet peppers have all done remarkably well and caught up. But in today's programme, we're going to take a close look at how our melons fared. Hello and welcome back to the Newdig Norfolk Gardener. I need to take you all the way back to March the 23rd. It was a Sunday. That's when we sowed our melon seeds. We grew 3 varieties. Emir, which is an F1. We also grew a variety called Hearts of Gold. And then we grew a heritage variety called Blenheim Orange. I'm very sad to say that the Blenheim Orange never made it. They didn't seem to be able to stand the rigours of what the weather was throwing at us at that time of the year. They just simply rotted away. I think we got one small fruit on it, didn't we, Mrs. W?
We did.
But then the whole plant collapsed and died, didn't it?
And it seemed like it had rotted at the base of the stem, and yet it hadn't been sitting in a lot of water or anything like that. So.
Not at all. The water doesn't gather in here whatsoever. It drains really well. So, kind of thinking to myself that the first lesson I need to take from our melon growing is that, perhaps the F1 varieties are our best option still at this moment in time. Clearly, if we get a better weather situation next season, they may do very well. Those melon seedlings grew away really nicely. In fact, they germinated really quick, didn't they? They germinated actually within the week. And a lot of people had been telling us that, you can wait quite a long time for the seeds to actually germinate. They did go onto a heat mat, so I'm sure that would have helped. And like I say, they germinated really quickly. But from then onwards was when we started to get a problem. The spring weather was extremely dull, very cold for the time of year, and of course, as we all know, it rained a lot. We had a great deal of rain. Now, here in our Zone 9A garden, we are right on the extreme east of the United Kingdom. It's the big bulbous bit that sticks out. Normally during the spring and summer months we do not see any easterly winds, but we did this year, and that's what made our weather so very cold this season. Once the plants were about so high, we brought them up to here to the polytunnel, thinking, they'll get some good light. I should have kept my eye on the ball just that bit better. It was too cold for them. They were hardly growing. They weren't dying.
No, they just seemed as if they stood still for quite a while, didn't they?
That they did.
Yeah.
That they did. Eventually, as we went into May, I said to Mrs. W, these just aren't really moving. They hardly seem to be growing. We're going to take them back down to the house. Which we did. They did start to grow away again with the slightly higher temperature. But thinking about it, I think what I should have done was to put them back onto the heat mat so they had a bit of bottom heat. Melons do like the warmth. They don't particularly like the cold. Because the plants were so small, they didn't actually go into their final growing positions until June. We wanted to put them in just before we went away on holiday, which was the end of May, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah.
But they still look so very small.
Mm.
Well, I just can't see them surviving. First week in June, once we got back from holiday, you saw us put them in here in their final growing positions. What happened then was we had no summer in June. The weather was awful. It was really cold. At the beginning of June, we were actually coming in here and the overnight temperatures were just 4 degrees. We were barely getting to 10 degrees by day, and these plants really didn't want to know. By the end of June, they had started to grow a bit. And we thought, hello, here we go. And that's because in the second half of June, it actually warmed up. And we started to get a bit of a summer. Then, beginning of July, the weather decides to turn very cool and extremely wet again. Temperatures were really low, and these plants were barely any higher than this during the month of July. Now, because of all of those cooler temperatures, we were keeping the door to the polytunnel shut because overnight temperatures were really quite low. And with our daytime temperatures struggling too, we felt we couldn't really open that door because we simply didn't know what the weather was going to do from day to day. We were starting to see flowers on them, but I think they just weren't getting pollinated because that door was closed. We lost 2 weeks of the pollinators getting in here and actually pollinating them. If you remember, I made a video earlier in the year about the weather and the fact that we weren't seeing so many pollinators anymore. Certainly where we live. And then from late July, we got our summer.
And away they went.
And away they went, Mrs. W. We were able to start the pruning regime once we got 4 melons on them. And in the main, each of these plants have seen 4 melons on them. Then it was just a question of when are they going to ripen? And I can see a really good example here of, because I get asked this quite a lot, and bearing in mind, this is our first season of growing melons too. You can see here that this melon has changed colour as compared to this.
And texture as well, it's sort of netted skin now, whereas they're smoother when they're younger, aren't they?
That's right. And this one is giving off a smell of melon. You can see on these hearts of gold, these plants are dying off, and so is the original Amir where we took our first melons from. There's now no longer any leaf on here, so there's little point in leaving these on the plant. So what we shall do is we shall harvest these, we shall take them down to the house and ripen them down there. You can add a banana to them or an apple to help them ripen. The only other thing to remember is that with the melon, when you harvest them like this, they will not get any sweeter. The only thing you can do with them by taking them down to your house is to actually ripen them. Here in the greenhouse, however, it's a different story. These hearts of gold have ripened. You can see the netting that's on there. They've also changed colour.
And you can smell the melon as you walk in here too, can't you?
You can indeed. As you can see, this plant has died back too. It's had enough now, just like the ones in the polytunnel. Now we also attempted to grow a watermelon. 2 watermelons actually. And we weren't successful with those And again, I think that's down to all the same reasons with our regular melons. I think we possibly had a problem with pollination. I think Mrs. W was telling me before we started this video that we've had 15 watermelons that have appeared on the plant. And each time they've dropped off. But as you can see here, we actually have one on here now that's actually managed to stay on. Unfortunately, being mid-September, it's never going to have the time to get big enough or to ripen.
But we shall try again next year.
We shall indeed. I've come down to the kitchen and going to do a bit of a taste test to see which one we prefer. Oh, look at that, Mrs. W.
Well, that looks lovely, doesn't it? And this is the Amir, isn't it?
This is the Amir F1. And you can see it's got some give in it, so it's certainly not overripe. Now I'm just going to scoop the seeds out. Taste the sugars in it, Mrs. W.
Good. Nice and juicy.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
I looked at it when you were taking the seeds out. It looks lovely.
Now, I'm no melon connoisseur. In fact, I've never tried melon before in my life. Myself and Mrs. W grew these because we know our grandchildren absolutely love them. And I know Mrs. W actually likes them.
Yes, I do. They're lovely.
And I read some comments over the last couple of months or so as yours have been ripening, because it does appear that many of yours have been ripening long before ours. And people are saying that the Amir not got a great taste. So I'm probably not the best person to judge whether that's great or not, simply because I don't usually eat them. I certainly shall be from now on.
Good.
Because they really do. They're much like a cucumber, but just sweeter, aren't they?
Yes, yeah, they are.
And as you know, Mrs. W, I don't really eat cucumber.
No.
It's not my most favourite of vegetable. But with that sweetness in there, yeah, I can see why people really like melons. Now this is what's left of the melon we had the other day. It's about 3 days old now. There's not much of it left. But you can see compared to this, it's gone much more orange. So if anything, we've harvested this one just a little bit too early. So as you can see, there's much for us to learn as yet. We've got the growing okay. We'll alter a few things next season. And as the years go by, we'll know exactly when to pick these so that they're at their optimum. This one was actually sweeter than this one. And if you want to see how we get along with doing that next year, along with all the other vegetables that we grow in our no-dig garden, then make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you're able to follow along with us. So next we're going to look at the hearts of gold. Oh, look at that look.
Lovely. I haven't tried the hearts of gold. I'd only tried the Amir, so.
Do you know the smell from that to this is really quite different.
Sweeter, do you mean?
Yeah. I would imagine when I now taste this, this will be even sweeter. So I can understand why people are saying that that Amir has got a bit of a bland taste compared to other melons. Oh, that one really is. There's a definite difference in taste.
We will make a melon connoisseur out of you yet, Mr. Wilson.
And what Mrs. W did say is that as we have quite a few melons and they really don't last for too long, is that she's going to cut this flesh out and then just chop it up and freeze it so that we can enjoy the melon that little bit longer.
Yeah, all I will do is just pop that onto a tray and freeze them individually so they don't all get stuck together in the bag, and then once you've frozen them you can put them in a bag and just take out what you want as and when you want it. So
lovely. So, having never grown melons before, it was a real success for us to actually have melons to harvest and to enjoy. And today I've learnt that different melons taste quite differently. Some are more sweeter, some are a bit blander in taste. So would I grow melons again? I most definitely would, if only to see the joy on my grandson's face. But I've really enjoyed them and I'm enjoying eating them. So it's given us pleasure, and you've seen the plants that are up in the polytunnel, they do take up huge amounts of room. Everybody must have room somewhere in their undercover growing spaces for a couple of plants. 4 melons on each, 8 melons you'll have to eat lovely and fresh during the summer months. Now do let us know exactly how you've got on your melons, regardless whether like us, because I know several of you have grown them for the first time like us. And I'm pretty sure that people watching this video today, there will be people that have grown melons for many years. Do let us know how you've got on this year. Has your harvest been as good as you expected? You have grown them for the first time. Will you do it again? As I said, we most definitely will. I'll be interested to hear your comments. And if you're growing varieties that we didn't grow, do let us know in the comments as well, because I wouldn't mind trying a different variety next year. Whatever you're doing, have a great gardening week, won't you? And we shall see you on the next one.